Hello, my name is Maria Jolicoeur. Welcome to my show, Let's Talk About History. Today I'm with Dale Plummer, Norwich's historian. We will be discussing the Rochambeau route used during the Revolutionary War. Dale recently visited Bolton, Connecticut, where American and French students did archaeology work where Rochambeau troops camped. Here is a clip from Mount Vernon about the Washington and Rochambeau march route.
September 10th was no ordinary day at Mount Vernon. The soldiers camped, Martha Washington chatted, two generals shared their stories.
I have the great honor of introducing to you His Excellency, Lieutenant General, Comte de Rochambeau.
Son Excellence présente le lieutenant général Jean-Baptiste Donatien de Vimeur, le comte de Rochambeau.
Revolutionary troops fired cannons, and Mount Vernon unveiled a new portrait.
Hip, hip.
This celebration is not so much about the generals' meeting as it is about the road that brought them here.
It is well worth remembering that as Washington and Rochambeau are here at Mount Vernon from the 9th to the 12th of September, that they form the very tip of a column of soldiers, interrupted but nevertheless, which stretches with interruptions for 125 miles through Virginia and Maryland.
It's this trail that the day is all about.
The Washington-Rochambeau Revolutionary Route was designated a National Historic Trail by Congress and signed into law by the President in 2009. It joins 30 other national trails, scenic and historic, across the country.
And the world is still living with the altogether fortuitous consequences of Yorktown and the Franco-American friendship that made that victory possible.
Is a 680-mile series, 1,090-kilometer series of roads used in 1781 by the Continental Army under the command of George Washington and the Expedition Particulière under the command of the Jean-Baptiste de Rochambeau during their 14-week march from Newport, Rhode Island to Yorktown, Virginia. 4,000 French and 3,000 American soldiers began the march. French forces left Rhode Island in 1781 and joined Washington's force on the Hudson River the following month. The combined American and French armies headed south in August, marching through New Jersey, Connecticut, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, a route that allowed them to evade British troops. They reached Williamsburg, Virginia in late 1781, several weeks after the French Royal Fleet had won the Battle of the Chesapeake, preventing the British from reinforcing or evacuating General Cornwallis's army. On September 22nd, they combined with troops commanded by the Marquis de Lafayette. A 3-week siege of Yorktown led to Cornwallis' surrender on October 19th, 1781. The route is a designated National Historic Trail with interpretive literature, signs, and exhibits that describe the key role of French diplomatic, military, and economic aid to the United States during the American Revolutionary War. Now, on this route, the Rochambeau's troops went through Connecticut when they were traveling from Newport, Rhode Island. They went through Connecticut, and they went to Bolton. In June, there were American and French students who went to Bolton, Connecticut this past June, and they did some archaeology digging. And Dale, you visited there this summer in June.
Yes, that's right.
And you observed some of the goings-on that happened at the archaeology dig. What did you observe while you were there?
Well, this was really the beginning of the project. They had just started some test digging. Unfortunately, it had been raining, so they had to put tents over the sites they were digging at. And but in the meantime, they had an opportunity to meet the students, both the American and the French students and their parents, and to speak with the state archaeologists and other folks involved in it.
I have there was an article in the Day newspaper, and it speaks that the revolutionary spirit that connected the old and the new worlds in the late 18th century was the focus at a Bolton farm where the Comte de Rochambeau and his French forces camped in June 1781 on their march to join General George Washington's army and ultimately confront the British in Yorktown. 13 French students arrived in Connecticut on Tuesday, joining 16 Connecticut students in a program of the Museum of Connecticut History called Digging into History. All of the students are staying in dormitories at Central Connecticut State University in New Britain until the French group heads to New York on July 24th and then home 2 days later. So I noticed in the article they said they came across like a doorknob that maybe belonged to an old barn, but do you happen to know if they came across anything during their archaeology dig?
I'm sure they did. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with all they did, but I can tell you what sort of things they almost certainly encountered. And that is, you had several thousand men coming through, not at one time, but in, I think it was 3 separate waves. So one group would come through, they would camp, and then they would leave, and then the next group would come in, occupy the same campground, and then a third group. So this site was occupied by large numbers of men for several days. And invariably what would happen would be people would lose things. What do you lose when you're walking around? You lose buttons, you lose coins, you drop maybe tools or small objects that you have. So some of those things would certainly have been found, and possibly some of the accoutrements connected with the horses, military equipment and so forth.
I'm sure they did find some
they did.
things,
They'd already sort of surveyed the area with
with one of those
metal detector.
detector.
Now the thing is that the advantage to this area was that, and the site was that, it's owned by the town of Bolton.
Okay.
It's a town heritage park, and so it has not been disturbed since Rochambeau was there.
Okay.
So they felt quite confident that they would be able to find material there from Rochambeau's stay, which is very difficult, because we're constantly digging things up and bulldozing and so on, and one of the real dangers is many archaeological sites within the state of Connecticut have been lost forever. But here you have a pristine site. The other thing is, this is a protected archaeological preserve. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So someone can't simply go out and with a metal detector and start digging up stuff.
All right, this is also from. Well, it's about Bolton. I don't know if it was the article in the newspaper. French encampment at Bolton, 21 through the 25th of June, 1781. It talks somewhat about from Wyndham to Bolton, a very small town of maybe 10 or 12 houses and a church.
Right.
The roads were frightful, with mountains and very steep grades. Describing the camp in Bolton, Jolicoeur adds that often we had great difficulty finding a level spot on which to pitch a camp. Baron Clausen recorded in his journal that we reached Bolton with the greatest difficulty since all the roads were terrible. Part of Bolton is halfway up a hill, and the foot of which we camped. The officers often above company grade who did not camp with the troops stayed either at Oliver White's Tavern across from the campsite or the southeast corner of Brandy Street in Bolton Center Road, or at Daniel White's Tavern at. We have those that photo of Daniel Oliver White's Tavern. Yeah, right here. Daniel White. So that is where the General Rochambeau stayed. White's Tavern at the sign of Black Horse on Hutchinson Road. Rochambeau himself spent the night in the home of the Reverend George Colton, on whose land the troops, the officers above grade stayed in these, but the Rochambeau stayed at Reverend George Colton, on whose land the troops camped. Bolton is a community of maybe 10 or 12 houses centered around a Presbyterian church provided by all accounts an exciting campground. So it's way out in the country.
It is, and in fact, I have here, this is a copy of a map that the French prepared of Bolton.
Oh.
And it shows, it's colored, it shows the location of the campground on the edge of the town, and here are the number of houses here. There's a large structure over here, which is undoubtedly a barn.
Mm-hmm.
So we know pretty well just where they camped because they recorded it visually in this map. It's quite a nice.
And this was called
map.
Camp 5.
Yes.
From Newport to Virginia, Yorktown, Virginia. This would be Camp 5.
Exactly.
So each camp was numbered as they went along.
Yes, and in fact, each camp, when they arrived at camp, the first thing they did, or one of the first things they did, was to build a field kitchen. So they actually had a kitchen that they built at each camp. And I think that from my conversations with them, they were hoping they might find some evidence of that field kitchen.
Yeah.
Plus, there might be evidence of what the men were eating. Bones, that kind of thing that were.
Oh,
yeah.
There was this article. It said that they were given hog or cattle, but to find it in an archaeology dig would have been great. Some kind of, a fire pit where they would have cooked or.
Right. And those things.
They were given wheat.
Probably survive in some form, or at least evidence of that use.
Yeah.
So the advantage to a site like this is, when it was occupied, only for a few days in 1781. Who was occupying it. It's a very well-defined site, so you get a little window into a very specific time in the past and a specific group of people. And archaeologists are pretty good at using that information to develop more. Because, the historic chronicles, the diaries, these other things don't tell you everything about the life of these men.
Yeah.
But the archaeological record can reveal a lot.
Yes. The revolutionary spirit that connected the Old and the New Worlds in the 18th century was the focus at the Bolton farm,
Yes.
where the Comte de Rochambeau and his French forces camped in 1781 on their march to General Washington's army and ultimately confront the British in Yorktown, Virginia.
Well, I think, too, that, you know, of course, the French Revolution happened after the American Revolution.
Yeah.
And we certainly had an influence on that. But we've also had, you know, a continuing relationship with France. And when our troops arrived in France during World War I, you know, one of the things that one of the officers said was, "Lafayette, we are here."
Oh,
So, you know,
yeah,
we are
yeah.
repaying the debt
Ally.
that we owe to
Yeah,
France
yeah.
by
We're
coming
still
and
allies.
assisting you, just as you helped us to
During
gain
the
independence.
Revolutionary War. Wow.
You know, and
Yeah.
we remember when we visited the Hermione in Newport a
Yes.
few years ago.
Yes.
Again, you know,
Yeah.
a reminder
That's what they
of
came
that.
over on in the
Yeah,
the troops in Newport when they landed in Newport.
right.
That was a replica of the ship that they came over on.
So it's really a very exciting thing, and for the French students to be here. And previous to this, in 2019, a group of Connecticut students went to Seicheprey, France, and excavated trenches that were held by Connecticut troops in April of 1918.
Oh.
So a century afterwards.
So there's a camaraderie.
There is. And
Amongst-
so these French
yeah.
students are from that same area in France. So here they're reciprocating.
Yeah.
They should have been here in 2020, but the COVID epidemic prevented their coming. So this is the first opportunity
Yeah.
there's been to reciprocate. And I think they're planning to go back and forth between France and Connecticut.
Oh, wonderful. And do archaeology?
Yes, and perhaps other things as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
but
That's
it's a
nice.
very, it's a really
learn
great,
history from each country, or
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
how we helped each other out in hard times, difficult times.
and I think it builds an
And during war
understanding and you know, the students that I met and their parents were very excited about this.
Wonderful.
And some of the same folks that were there in Seicheprey 4 years ago were there in Bolton, you know, helping out.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So it's been a big effort, and Christine Pitsley at the State Library has really spearheaded this this whole effort.
Well, how did the French students, learn about Rochambeau and where they camped out? I mean, in their history books, or any of them descended from revolutionary patriots, French?
I don't know. You know, I'm sure they have some information in their history books about Rochambeau.
Yeah, yeah.
But most of the information about the route here has been developed by our Connecticut historians.
Yeah. Where in New York did they camp? Or did the French students and American students go in New York?
Oh, you mean after this?
Yeah, after they went from
Well, I'm sure-
Bolton, they went to New York, but whereabouts in New York?
I think they visited some of the places, like, for instance, the Statue of Liberty.
Oh, I thought they did more archaeology work there.
No.
Oh, well, the Statue of Liberty is French. The French sent
Exactly.
that over.
So,
Oh, okay, yeah.
You know, they visited
would definitely
sites
want-
that were associated
Yeah.
with both countries.
Yeah.
So what they did was they worked very hard for several weeks. They also did some trail maintenance in the town park and other work for the town, as well as digging.
Yeah.
And then they rewarded them by, you know, bringing them down to New York,
Oh, wonderful.
doing some
Yeah.
sightseeing.
I mean, there's no bigger city in
Right.
the United States than New York
So I think
City.
the United Nations would certainly have been on the agenda.
Yeah.
The Statue of Liberty, certainly. How could you not see the Statue of Liberty?
Right. So, yeah, Yorktown, the 3-week siege of Yorktown led to Cornwallis' surrender on October 19th, 1781. So, now while in Bolton, one of the students, or the administrator, said, "It is one thing to declare freedom, it's another to win it."
Yes.
And that is that the trail administrator for the Washington Rochambeau Revolutionary Route said, and that's true.
Yes.
You
Very
know,
true.
and we're a young country, but you know, we have our history of winning battles.
Well, we certainly did something that really had not been done before.
Yeah.
You know, the notion of a country without a monarch and so forth was certainly well, maybe not unique, but it was certainly
Yeah.
a pretty new concept.
Yes.
And it has its roots, of course, in English history with the Commonwealth.
Right. And when
so on.
George Washington, when they wanted George Washington to lead, they said, "Should it be King George Washington?" And he said, "No.
No, exactly.
We'll be president and we'll vote
We're
for
very
who will
fortunate
be
that,
president." Yeah.
He had the good character to
Yeah. He
refuse
could have
that.
had it, you know, for a lifetime.
Yeah.
But no, he decided he didn't want our leader to be a king in the United States. So.
Right, and I think we reflected some of the ideals of the Enlightenment in our fledgling democracy. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was sort of, and then that helps to spark the French Revolution.
Yeah.
You know, it's sort of the history of ideas.
Much of the National Historic Trail from Newport to Yorktown is built and paved over Carowinds. Oh, it's built on and paved over, like you were saying.
Right.
Carowinds said, which makes the well-preserved Bolton site all the more extraordinary.
Yes.
Digging into History's program, director Christine Pitsley said that a French soldier from 1781 would instantly recognize the tiered fields of Bolton Center Road, which, among with other roads in the area, has followed the same line since the French encampment.
Exactly, and I think they had one or two other sites that offered the same kind of thing, but the advantage to the Bolton one is it's publicly owned. You know, it's difficult to get permission to do archaeology on a private piece of land.
Yeah.
So this was really an ideal situation. And
Yeah.
exciting that it happened right here in eastern Connecticut.
Right,
Not far
the
from us.
history. Yes,
Yeah.
the history. And I have a letter here, a copy of a letter. Well, it's the original letter, but it's a picture of it. It's a year later in June 1782. Oh, let's see. Jeremiah Wadsworth, the Reverend Colton asked troops and the troop supplier to Rochambeau that they take care of the supplier to Rochambeau for damages done by the French who were camped out day and night for their attendance. So this letter, it talks about from Bolton, Connecticut. I guess they left a mess, and he wanted to be reimbursed. The farmer wanted to be reimbursed for the damages at the farm in Bolton, where they camped.
Well, it makes sense, because if you have thousands of men with horses coming through, they're going to do damage no matter what. Unintentional, I'm sure, but you simply can't have that volume of people on your farm without damaging probably the crops, maybe some of the fences, and other aspects of it. So it's not unreasonable. I think these men were obviously in a hurry. They needed to get down to Yorktown, Pennsylvania, and help out. And this
Yorktown, Virginia.
was, Virginia, right?
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay.
Yorktown, Virginia. And
Yeah.
Really,
That's where they met Cornwallis and the British troops, and they defeated Cornwallis.
And that really was the
And the
end
British
of the revolution.
troops.
That,
Yes.
that decided the British that
I
they
think it
couldn't win.
with the American and French troops marching. It took up a length of about 125 miles. The troops marching through.
Yeah.
Something like that, 125 miles.
Well, it wouldn't be. I mean, that'd take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
And
4,000. Well, I'm sure that the 125 miles may be, scattered about.
Right.
Yep. So.
But from one end to the other, yes, that would
Yeah.
make sense.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't have them all. Yeah. Because they did come through Bolton, for instance, as I was saying, in several waves. They didn't all arrive at once, so they had to
Exactly.
space them out.
Yeah, Dale looks a little tired. He just got back from Kansas City, Missouri,
Yes.
at the World War I National Museum. So that'll be a subject for another show coming
Yes.
out. But I don't want to overdo Dale because he just got back from a plane trip last night, and he was gone for a week in Kansas City, Missouri. So I'm going to close, but first of all, I'd like to say thank you for watching my show. I hope you enjoyed it. And if there are any women who are interested in joining the Daughters of the American Revolution, and you have an ancestor who served in the Revolutionary War, and you're 18 years of age and older, please contact the Faith Trumbull chapter at 860-887-8737 for more information on how you can become a member. Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed my show. Thanks a lot.